In the grand hall of a luxurious hotel, golden chandeliers sparkled above the gathered guests. Cameras flashed, violins played, and everyone whispered about the marriage of the year. But behind the polished smiles and glittering gowns, there was a dark truth. The groom, Alexander Knight, one of the most powerful CEOs in the city, sat stiffly at the altar. His sharp jaw clenched, his eyes cold as ice. Everyone thought he was a man in love, but in reality, he was a man burning with hatred. And the reason for his fury? The bride, Elena Rivera. She stood gracefully in her flowing white gown, a vision of elegance and beauty. Yet Alexander's gaze was filled with contempt. To him, Elena wasn't his chosen bride. She was the woman who had ruined his life. Months earlier, Alexander had been set to marry the woman he truly loved, a woman from a wealthy family who perfectly matched his status. But that marriage was destroyed when scandals, rumors, and a shocking twist of fate forced him into a deal that tied him to Elena. She was from a family struggling to hold on to their business. And her marriage to Alexander was the only way to save them. To the world, it looked like a fairy tale union. To Alexander, it was a sentence. As they exchanged vows, his words were cold, almost mechanical. "I do." And when the priest announced them husband and wife, Alexander didn't kiss her lips. Instead, he gave the lightest brush to her cheek, a kiss of duty, not affection. But Elena, she lowered her eyes, hiding the storm in her heart. She had secrets of her own. She hadn't wanted this marriage either, but circumstances had left her with no choice. As the wedding ended and the guests cheered, Elena whispered to herself, "Maybe, one day, he'll see the truth." Little did she know, that truth would begin to unfold, that very night. Because when the doors closed and they were finally alone, hatred would clash with hidden love. And a night that began with anger, would end with revelation. Narrator voice, emotional, suspenseful tone. The wedding reception ended late. The laughter of guests, the clinking of glasses, and the flash of cameras slowly faded into silence as Alexander and Elena were finally left alone, in the grand suite prepared for them. The heavy doors closed. The atmosphere shifted. Gone was the facade of the perfect couple. Instead, the room filled with tension so sharp, it could cut the air in half. Alexander pulled off his tie and threw it on the chair, his jaw tight. He didn't even glance at Elena. "Don't think for a second that this changes anything," he said coldly, his voice like ice. "This marriage is nothing but a business deal. You disgust me." Elena stood near the window, the moonlight bathing her in silver. She flinched at his words, but she did not cry. Instead, she whispered softly, "You think I wanted this, Alexander? You think I begged for this marriage? No, I never wanted to marry a man who despises me." Her voice trembled, but her eyes glimmered with unspoken strength. Alexander turned sharply, his gaze burning with anger. "Then why? Why did you let it happen? Because you wanted money, power, my family's name." For a moment, Elena looked away, her lips pressed tightly together. She couldn't tell him the truth, not yet. The truth that she had sacrificed her happiness, her freedom, and even her dreams, to protect someone she loved. So instead, she simply said, "You'll understand one day. Or maybe, you never will." Alexander's anger flared. He stepped closer, towering over her. But as his eyes locked onto hers, something strange stirred within him. Behind her calmness, behind her sorrow, there was no greed. No hunger for wealth. Instead, he saw pain. Silent, deep pain she was desperately trying to hide. And for the first time, Alexander hesitated. He had sworn to hate her. Sworn to make her regret entering his life. But in that moment, his chest tightened in a way he couldn't explain. The night stretched on in silence, the distance between them both a wall and a bridge. And though Alexander turned away, lying stiffly on his side of the bed, sleep did not come easily. His mind kept replaying her words, her trembling voice, and the glimmer in her eyes. Elena, on the other hand, sat by the window until dawn, whispering softly to herself. "Maybe tomorrow, he'll see who I really am." Neither of them knew it yet, but this was only the beginning. Because soon, secrets would unfold. And hatred would give way to something far more dangerous. Something neither of them expected. Love. Narrator voice, heartfelt, intense tone. Days turned into weeks, and the tension inside the mansion grew heavier with every passing moment. Alexander barely spoke to Elena, keeping himself buried in work. But no matter how hard he tried to stay cold, he couldn't ignore her presence. She wasn't what he expected. She didn't throw his money around. She didn't demand attention. She didn't play the role of a spoiled, CEO's wife. Instead, she spent her days quietly, helping the house staff, supporting his grandmother, and smiling softly even when her eyes were heavy with sadness. The cracks in Alexander's hatred began to show. He found himself watching her when she wasn't looking. He caught himself remembering the sound of her voice. And slowly, very slowly, something inside him began to change. But the turning point came one rainy evening. Alexander returned home early, only to overhear a hushed conversation. Elena was in the library, speaking on the phone, her voice breaking. "Don't worry, little brother," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "I promised I'd protect you. As long as I'm married to Alexander, your treatments will be covered. Just stay strong for me." Alexander froze. His heart thundered in his chest. Her brother, sick, treatments. And then it all clicked. The marriage wasn't about money. It wasn't about status. It was about sacrifice. She had given up her freedom, her happiness, even her dignity, to save the person she loved most. That night, guilt consumed him. He remembered his cruel words, his cold stares, the way he had accused her of greed. And yet, she had borne it all, silently. When Elena finally noticed him standing there, her face turned pale. She tried to explain, but before she could, Alexander stepped forward. His voice, for the first time, wasn't cold. It trembled. "Why didn't you tell me?" Elena wiped her tears, shaking her head. "Would you have believed me? You already decided who I was." Her words cut deep, sharper than any blade. In that moment, Alexander did something he never imagined. He reached out, and pulled her into his arms. "I was blind," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I thought you were my enemy, but all along, you were saving someone you loved. Elena, I don't deserve you." For the first time since their marriage, Elena cried openly, not out of pain, but out of release. From that night forward, everything began to change. Alexander's walls crumbled. His hatred turned to remorse. And slowly, remorse turned into admiration, then affection, then something far deeper. He started showing up at her side, protecting her, supporting her. And one evening, standing under the same chandeliers where their loveless wedding had taken place, Alexander finally took her hands and whispered the words he once thought he'd never say. "I married you in anger. But now, I love you with everything I am." Elena's tears fell freely as she whispered back. "And I loved you, even when you hated me." The crowd of guests gasped as Alexander kissed her, this time not out of duty, not out of pretense, but out of love. And in that moment, the marriage that began in hatred, became the love story of a lifetime.